keeping our culture lifted. Now you can watch and listen to Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac, oh, what show is that? It's the Tammi Mac Show on Fox Soul. Tammi Mac, hey, Tammi Mac, yeah, ooh that, Tammi Mac, Tammi Mac, hey, so you know this Tammi Mac, hey, Tammi Mac.
Welcome to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. I am Tammi Mac. Hey! So cultural appropriation has been a hot button issue for many years now. And while many people do honestly appreciate and celebrate the beauty of different cultures and their traditions, there have been many who have been accused of exploiting Black and Brown cultures for their own profit and gain. Well, tonight, the business of being Black is cultural appropriation. What is it? And does it really exist? I mean, where did that whole situation come from? Kicking off this conversation is author, artist, and activist Rachel Dolezal. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
Hey, so Rachel, most would remember you, if it's okay, most would remember you from going viral as a woman, as a white woman identifying as Black, and from jokes to disdain to utter disbelief, you became a part of what we now know as cancel culture. And I have to say that I was there with people, Rachel, until I discovered you were president of your local NAACP chapter, instructor of Africana Studies, and a true civil rights leader, which you continue to do today. And I have to say, it's some of the people that were upset with you don't do nearly half as much as you do for Black people in the Black community. So I think for me, it became a kind of like what Martin Luther King would say. Do we really judge people by the content of their character? Or do we judge them by their skin color? And I had to literally take a look in the mirror myself and say, well, wait a minute. This is a woman who's done for the Black community. What are we mad at? Why are we mad? So can you explain to our viewers tonight, Rachel, how do you identify?
Yeah, so I identify most importantly as a mother to 3 amazing Black sons, one of whom is on the autism spectrum. And I also identify as an artist and a human rights activist, and still fight, as you said, for the cause to deinstitutionalize racism and protect the rights of anyone who's marginalized or oppressed.
So I love that you say you use these adjectives to identify yourself, but I also heard you say that you identify as human. Is that true?
Yes, well, absolutely. I've always identified racially as human, and then, of course, I affiliate more with Black culture than white culture, but there is only one human race. So,
and how can that, do you think that that is something that the world should take a hold of, as identifying as human?
absolutely. I think that it's long overdue as well that people acknowledge and pay homage to our origins in the continent of Africa, our human origins, and that is truly the origin of civilization itself. And so, yeah, I think it's overdue for sure. I think some people like to pretend they're members of a superior race, but scientifically, the human race doesn't meet the zoological requirements for separate races, so-called.
I have asked this question on my show several times before about the box. Do you think we should be checking boxes? Black, white, other?
Yeah. Well, my question is it resulting in more social justice? Is it resulting in more inclusion and equity? Is it resulting in these disproportionalities being shored up? And I'm not sure it is. And that's the defense for keeping the boxes. But I think that all too often, those boxes can be used for discrimination. So, I led one of the Ban the Box initiatives in Spokane, Washington, for Ban the Box for felons, right? For getting city jobs, municipal jobs. And I think, just getting that foot in the door to be seen for their qualifications or skills or what they bring to the table was very important for that. And I think similarly, maybe we're moving also towards that with gender. Do we expand the categories and keep adding more and more categories, or do we just eliminate those boxes to check? And I think that even with the US Census, we started with 3 categories for race. Now we have 15. So what really is race?
15 categories for race? I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's absolutely, yeah. What do you find is the difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation?
Yeah, well, I get asked that question a lot. And I think there's a big difference between a journey of self discovery and identity versus an intention to exploit or profit from a culture that doesn't wholly resonate with the person's own lifestyle and values. And I think the question of intention is really measurable in a person's values because, ultimately we all need to assess whether we're authentically supporting the cultural values and people that we care about the most in our actions and in our daily lives.
Yeah. I'm interested in knowing how you feel about some people, about the Black community embracing some white people, but not embracing someone's transracial like you. I'm just interested in knowing how that makes you feel as a human.
Well, I mean, I do get love and hate, and quite honestly, the hate started from the white side. So, I get love and hate from both sides still to this day. But when it comes to the term transracial, I don't see myself as that in terms of the term, just because, as I discussed, I don't agree with the premise of
Oh, okay.
transracial because I don't subscribe to the race world view, and I've always identified racially as human and affiliate more with Black culture than white. But culture is very different by definition from race.
Yes, of course. Culture is absolutely different from race. You're absolutely right. So then, is it possible that I myself could identify as human? Because I would love to.
I think that this is the the part of identity that few people talk about, and that's self-determination. So you know who you are, and you don't afford anyone the right to tell you who you are. So absolutely, if you want to identify as human, by all means identify as human. I mean, as I said, scientifically, we are all one human race.
One
And
human race.
yeah, that's been the case for, this idea of race has only been around for 500 or so years,
Right.
coming out of colonialism, right? So it's a relatively new idea even, and even words like transracial used to be actually attached to adoptees who were adopted into a family that was different from their
Yeah,
birth
I was
family.
going to ask where that word came from. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you that. So thank you for
Yeah,
answering
so
that.
historically it was used in that context. In race and culture studies, we talked about transracial in that context. And then in 2015, because Caitlyn Jenner came out the same month and year that the media firestorm hit me, then it was kind of like people started kind of appropriating that word, to label me with that word. But I never actually used that word. And I discuss in my book, all my reasons why and so forth. But of course, words take on meaning that people give to the words. So that's, I know what I believe, and people are free to disagree or agree how they see fit.
Yeah. Why do you think your work itself didn't stand alone when the controversy happened? What? Because you've done a lot, and you, like I said, you continue to do. You've done a lot of work. Why doesn't a person's work stand alone? What does it matter what color a person is if their work is impeccable?
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think that we should be judged by the content of our character and by our actions more than how we appear or what other people's perceptions or agendas are. And it was absolutely heartbreaking to have all of my work disrupted in for really what I would see as like a shallow issue. I mean, our children are dying in the streets. I mean, there are major education inequities, all these things. Like, who cares how I wear my hair? Like, just how did this even become a big issue? It was so surreal to me that it took on such momentum and such focus. And I think that too often those kind of personal attacks are a distraction from the important work that we need to all be focusing on, which is of course deinstitutionalizing racism and working towards inclusion and equity in our society.
Is that what inspired you to write the book?
Yes, I wrote my book really because I just wanted to tell my full story in my own words, and so people could really understand who I really am. My life can't be summed up in a soundbite, and that's what was happening in the media. And so it really needed the space of a book to really tell all of my journey uncensored. And to this day, the only place that my story lives uncensored, unedited, without a spin, without some other agenda, is in my book.
Yeah. And this is my first time meeting you and talking to you. And just talking to you, I understand what you're saying when you said that your life was kind of given to people in sound bites. I have to agree with that, because the way that you're talking now and the way that you're explaining things to me now, I'm like, I never saw that on TV. I never saw that on any clip that they showed of you, which is sad because you are a woman of depth. And I think that just like we live in a society now that nobody wants to be labeled anything anymore. We're trying to get rid of man, woman, gay, straight, homosexual. Like, we are trying to get rid of labels altogether. And
Right.
I think perhaps you might be a pioneer in getting rid of that racial label. And I think that that's a good thing and not necessarily a bad thing. Don't you?
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why when you ask me how do I define myself or how do I identify, is, I started with, I'm a mother and an artist and a human rights advocate. And I think that we really need to let people speak for themselves, and instead of trying to sum up a whole person or a whole life with one word, are you white or black? Versus, who are you? How do you describe yourself? And I think that's more empowering, and that's also just more helpful and more enlightening. If I was to ask you, how you identify in one word, I would not learn as much about you as if I said, describe yourself to me, and then listened, to your full answer. So
Yeah. What is the misconception? What's the biggest misconception people have of you?
I think the biggest misconception is that I'm a taker instead of a giver. And I've lost a lot more than I've gained, but in spite of what I've lost, I'm not deterred in fighting for the cause of social justice that I care so much about.
That in itself speaks volumes about who you are, because if I were you, I would be pissed at the Black community. But you instead are still working for the Black community, the culture that you hold so close to your heart, the culture that you hold dearly. So tell me about your artwork, because it has a lot to do with the culture and what's happening in the Black community.
Yeah, absolutely. So my art really celebrates the resilience of the human spirit and resists the social subtext of white as the standard for normal or beautiful. And my art really springs from a resourceful process of using found objects and materials as textural metaphor in pieces. I grew up poor, so I didn't have fancy art supplies to create. And so I created with things like elk hide and eggshells and puzzle pieces, like the piece behind me here. And
I love that piece. I love that, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. The puzzle pieces is called Connecting Thoughts. And so the puzzle pieces, kind of are a metaphor for that, as well as for autism, as my youngest son has autism. So people on the spectrum sometimes use a puzzle piece as a way of describing the neurological connections in young children's minds.
Yeah, and then the names behind you is also your artwork.
Yes, Anthology 1 and Anthology 2 are these paintings, and they're 52 and 53 names of individuals who have been killed by police or neighborhood vigilantes through acts of racism.
Yeah, you taught me a new word today, Rachel. Neighborhood vigilantes. It's supposed to be a good word, but it's not in this case. We're talking about these neighborhood vigilantes that go after Black people and kill them. You know, Ahmaud Arbery, Emmett Till, all of those are labeled in your artwork there. So thank you so much for talking to me and sharing with us what you have been doing and how you still continue to support and fight and champion for people's rights. I appreciate that, Rachel. Thank you so much for being on the Tammi McLeod Show.
Thank you, Tammi.
We'll be right back.
I almost got into a fight at JFK yesterday.
Hollywood Unlocked, Uncensored.
Now that everybody's trying to travel, people have forgotten what it's like to be crowded around the little bin where your luggage comes out.
Every Thursday.
I said, can you go stand on the other side, sir? I need to get right here because I know my bag is going to come out priority because I'm a priority. And he just looked at me. He refuses to move. I see my bag coming, so I nudged him.
You hit him first.
I did not hit him.
You nudged him.
I nudged him.
Wendy had a lot to say about Tabitha retiring her husband from the Los Angeles Police Force after 15 years.
TGIF.
I can't say what I want to say because that lady in our industry, and I don't need her shutting our stuff down. But Wendy need to mind her damn business. Every man is not Kevin Hunter.
Every Wednesday and Friday.
I'm gonna give them to you, Tabitha Brown. I'm giving you your roses. You inspire me.
When we come to LA, we want you to cook for us, Tabitha.
Every weekend, to get the true word on the street, you've got to speak the language.
It's time to put the culture back in pop culture.
Central Ave, a modern deep dive into entertainment that drives to the heart of the story. Fresh takes and authentic voices, bringing you the right show for right now.
Welcome to Central Ave.
Central Avenue. Weekends at 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on Fox Soul.
You know, cocktails of Queens, baby. Best Mondays, here you go. Don't step in. Yeah.
This weekend on Fox Soul.
I want to make sure I make the most of it. So
Go out with a bang. A big bang on the floor. Yeah. Bang, bang, bang.
Watch your favorite shows of the week.
We should hold each other accountable, not cancel. I saw everybody online talking about cancel Felicia Rashad. You gonna cancel Claire Huxtable? Are you crazy?
Fox Soul Weekend.
Nah, not with me. I'm not.
Welcome back to the Tammi McLeod Show on Fox Soul. Hello, everybody. So today's conversation is about cultural appropriation. And how do we discuss cultural appropriation in today's world? Well, I really think that perhaps we should take a deeper look into this cultural appropriation. And so I brought some more people in with me today. Joining the conversation now is political commentator Mo Kelly, the host of Just Thinking Out Loud, Desiree, and senior reporter and author Nadra Nittel. Hi. Hi, Nadra.
Hi.
So let's talk about this. I'm sure you all were listening to our conversation with Rachel Dolezal, and she defined, I asked her, how does she identify herself? And she said, as a human. Isn't that a wonderful world to live in, where we could all define ourselves as human? And I wanted to start off because I said during that segment that I would love to define myself as human. So I'm just interested in knowing if any of you feel the same way, because I wasn't being smug when I said that. I literally would not. I would like to not have to check that box and just have it be a human box. Do any of you feel that way? Let's kick it off with you, Mo.
Well, I got to say, we're probably in agreement that race is a social construct. It's something that was created, yes, out of colonialism. But when we talk about cultural tradition, it's not only what I feel and what I experience, but how I'm treated in the world. Like, for example, my first day of kindergarten, I was called the N-word. I've been sitting at the bus stop and had drinks thrown at me. That's a part, unfortunately, of the cultural tradition. And if you go back far enough to like slavery, out of those experiences, experiences, you get this cultural evolution where you would have music and hairstyles and artistry. So when you talk about the cultural significance of what it means to be Black and African American, yes, we are all humans, but there's a cultural specificity which only applies to us because only we have gone through certain things.
Okay, but she did say she identifies culturally with the Black community.
And I, with all great respect, I don't agree with that. I think that's aspirational. I think you can be an ally, but if the world does not treat you as an African American or a Black person, and you have the option to strive for that, then you're not actually a part of that. I don't have that option. The world's going to treat me how the world's going to treat me. And I'm not saying that as a victim, I'm saying that as a statement of fact. And so I have to maneuver in ways, and I have fewer options in that maneuverability than Rachel Dolezal would have.
Desiree?
I don't identify as Black. I identify as human. When I came to the United States without any knowledge whatsoever of the racial stuff, because believe it or not, coming from outside, I didn't really see that distinction between Black and white in America. I used to put other West Indian or other Caribbean. Now I just try to avoid it altogether, but unfortunately it's mandated usually.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, how do you avoid it?
Usually with government documents. So I do think that's possible. At the same time, I recognize that there are people who will see me. Okay, I need to explain this properly. So obviously I am Black, but I don't identify as Black in the way that a lot of Americans use those terms, because there's a lot more attached to it in terms of some of the things that.
Let me ask you this, Desiree, before you continue. Let me ask you this. Do you get treated like a Black person?
I don't know. I can say that I lived in Jamaica until I was 17, and then I came to the US, and I was in a majority white area, at least at first. And then I would say that I wasn't really, in my opinion, treated as Black until I was actually in a less white area, where that became more important in terms of how people would relate to me. So that's my experience, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But to directly answer your question, I don't think I did. Like
no one has ever followed you around in the store. No one's asked to touch your hair, that kind of thing.
No, I have had kids want to touch my hair, but they're kids. So that's very different. I do know my younger brother, he has experienced racism, he told me, but not in the US, but in Brazil, actually. So that's that's not my story, but that's a story that I would really believe because it's my younger brother.
Nadra.
Yes, I identify as Black. And in terms of identifying as human or checking a box or not, we actually do have countries like France. We have some countries in Latin America where they do not have people identify by race when they're searching for jobs, when they're applying for college. But the people of African descent and even Arab descent and other ethnic groups in those countries actually do not like that, because it allows discrimination to run rampant. So if they're not identifying anyone by race, it's very hard for them to have a record of where the inequities lie. So I think as long as there is racism and discrimination, it's in our best interest as people of color to check a box.
So Nadra, are you saying that if we don't check boxes, then racism would be worse?
Well, when you look to some of the countries in Latin America, some of the European countries, that is what people of color, Black and other people of color, other marginalized groups say. They say that they are discriminated against. They are less likely to get jobs. They are racially segregated in terms of the neighborhoods they live in, but there's no way to really track that or verify their experiences because there is no racial record. So just going on the testimony of those individuals, I think it's important in that sense to check a box. Now, in every aspect of life. Is it important? Not necessarily. But when we want to track discrimination in terms of jobs, housing, education, I think it is important.
Mo, you agree with that?
I think it's essential, and I think we don't want to just short shrift other people in the African diaspora. If you are from Haiti, you're going to have a different experience, a different cultural experience. If you're coming from Jamaica, a different cultural experience. But I'm speaking specifically because I have a Black African American experience, which is inextricably linked to the events in the United States. And my cultural tradition, if we talk about cultural appropriation, is specific and distinct and would be different from others. But I think we have to be careful not to just commingle race with culture for that reason, because they would not be the same. Someone from Jamaica is not going to have the same cultural tradition or all the same experiences unless they had their whole life spent here. I'm coming up as an African American from the descendants of slaves, and you have Negro spirituals in the field, which led to blues and gospel music. And that's and the music we listen to here in the United States are direct descendants of that. That's an expanding and an evolutionary cultural tradition that other members of the African diaspora, be it in Latin or South America, would not have. So let's not commingle race and culture.
Okay. So why do you think, and anyone can take this question, but one of the questions I wanted to ask Rachel, we didn't get a chance to get around to it, was why do you think the Black community did a kind of cast her away, but then the Black community embraces Justin Bieber, Tina Marie, Mariah Carey, Justin Timberlake? Why? What is it with Black people picking and choosing the white people they want to let into the circle?
Well, I don't think they are necessarily picking and choosing, and Justin Timberlake and Justin Bieber, they've gotten their fair share of criticism. I think for Rachel, there was no need for her to misrepresent her race, which I don't know if she would agree with, but it was widely reported that she did. The NAACP, for example, has always been a multiracial, multicultural group from its inception. So there was, she could have been a civil rights activist. She could have taught what she taught as a white person. There was no need to mislead people about her origin. So I think that's where some of the outrage comes. Also, when you look at, and I don't know how she got her jobs, but if she was identifying as a woman of color, perhaps people are upset because they think that job, her job as a professor, for example, could have gone to an actual woman of color, a group that is marginalized in academia. The same in terms of her art background at Howard University. She got a scholarship to go there to get in this art program. And my understanding is that when she applied, the admissions office did not realize she was white. Again, that was a slap that could have gone to a Black person.
So then, Desiree, what role does history play where it comes to cultural appropriation?
Well, there's something that Mo said that I wanted to touch on, but I realized I need to say my words more quickly. He said that something about the African American or Black American, I'm not sure what term he used, experience is unique. And I don't actually think that it is, which I know would upset a lot of people when I say that. But the history of slavery, of oppression, of having to hide your culture, of having to maintain it because there are outside forces that don't want you to have it, I don't think that's unique to any specific human group. I do think that America has a specific history that has to do with that, but so many people around the world come to America who also have this in their heritage. So to try to answer your question about the cultural appropriation and race, there is a specialness, maybe special isn't the right word. There is a narrative that I've experienced in the US of Black Americans saying that their victimization, which happened, is unique, but I don't think it's that unique. And I know that's very antithetical to what a lot of people think, but that's...
Well, but Desiree, it's also unique that you've never experienced racism.
Not overt.
That is not unique to Black people in America.
I'm sure people have thought stuff, but no, I really haven't had any, like, I can say for sure. There are things that I could think, oh, maybe someone was racist, but I also don't think it's that big of a deal. If someone might think something in their head about me, that's something that I can just ignore. And I
Yeah,
also
and
don't
I
want to
think, and what
assume.
I'm saying to that is that in itself is a unique experience that most African Americans do not have the luxury of here in America. So I'm just tagging on to what you said, that we all have these unique experiences, and I'm saying yours is especially unique when it comes to being Black in America, because we all have dealt with that. Am I wrong about that, Mo?
Well, let me say this, since I was name checked, let's not conflate the uniqueness of the Black African American experience with victimhood. The very fact that we have an African diaspora, that means that there are some similar experiences as far as how we got dispersed around the world. But as far as what happened specifically in America, it's not the same which happened in Haiti with Toussaint Louverture. It's not the same as what happened in South America and what Brazilians are dealing with right now. It's just not the same as far as what maybe Africans who come here later in history on their own, of their own volition. What happened to African Americans, I'm not saying it's worse than, I'm not saying that we're more of a victim, because I hate that word. I'm saying it's just unique to the evolution of this country. And I wouldn't say that Jamaica didn't get it as badly, or Haiti, or even some of the countries in South America. I'm just saying specifically, since we're talking about cultural appropriation, we have to be honest in the sense of when we talk about the misappropriation or the appropriation of African American culture. Specifically, we mentioned Justin Bieber, that's African American culture we're talking about. Mariah Carey, she's half Black, so I don't want to denigrate her in that way. But when you talk about these people that you name checked, we're specifically talking about whether they appropriated African American culture, not just Black culture, quote unquote, around the world.
We're going to take a quick break. Come right back on the Tammi McElate Show on Fox Soul.
Funky, I've been dating this brother I met in prison. I love him, but what do I do?
First of all, people ain't got to know your man was in jail.
TGIF.
That's the
We're both
equivalent.
in jail for committing a damn crime.
They-
So now one of them can judge the other.
Every Wednesday and Friday.
They're not both in jail.
Yeah, they met in jail.
Stream it live on Fox Soul.
You don't need to be worried about nobody judging him. You need to be worried about somebody judging you. Okay, what the hell?
You know, cocktails of Queens, baby. Best Mondays, here you go. Don't step in. Yeah.
This weekend on Fox Soul.
I want to make sure I make the most of it. So
Go out with a bang. A big bang on the door. Yeah. Bang, bang, bang.
Watch your favorite shows of the week.
We should hold each other accountable, not cancel. I saw everybody online talking about cancel Felicia Rashad. You gonna cancel Claire Huxtable? Are you crazy?
Fox Soul Weekend.
Nah, not with me. I'm not. I almost got into a fight at JFK yesterday.
Hollywood Unlocked, Uncensored.
Now that everybody's trying to travel, people have forgotten what it's like to be crowded around the little bin where your luggage comes out.
Every Thursday.
I said, can you go stand on the other side, sir? I need to get right here because I know my bag is going to come out priority because I'm a priority. And he just looked at me. He refuses to move. I see my bag coming, so I nudged him.
You hit him first.
I did not hit him.
You nudged him.
I nudged him.
Every weekend, to get the true word on the street, you've got to speak the language.
It's time to put the culture back in pop culture.
Central Ave, a modern deep dive into entertainment that drives to the heart of the story. Fresh takes and authentic voices, bringing you the right show for right now.
Welcome to Central Ave.
Central Avenue. Weekends at 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on Fox Soul.
Welcome back to the Tammi McElate Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the conversation is about cultural appropriation. Thanks to my guest tonight. Let's go to the chat room. Bo Ellie says they use those racial surveys for more than good. Yeah, for more harm than good. Don't be fooled. Higher income and Caucasian areas get more public funding. Nadra, how you feel about that?
Well, I think he's conflating two different things. So yes, there is racial segregation. We are still dealing with the history of redlining, and in traditionally redline neighborhoods, there are less resources and city services. So that's certainly true. But what I'm talking about is at the university level, for example, finding out how much of the student population belongs to a certain group, or in a corporation, the same. That's what people across the African diaspora are saying is a problem, because there's no way to track how they're discriminated against. So we have countries like France, we have countries in Latin America and South America where they're saying, you know, they don't see race, everyone is equal, and yet the people of color remain at the bottom.
Mo Kelly had a power outage, so we lost him for a minute. Hopefully, the power will come back on and we can get him back on the line. So Desiree, I'll ask you the same question. You think the boxes hurt more than they help?
I do. I most definitely think that they hurt more than they help. I think that we should encourage seeing the common humanity in people. And I really think that if all your life, which happens in the US, which didn't happen how I grew up, except for like my driver's license, you are constantly asked to identify yourself by your race. And I think that mentally you build your life with a construct of race. And it's just like being fish in the sea, or fish in water, or whatever that saying is. So that's my perspective coming from the outside, and hearing people say that, oh, you can't ignore this thing. And no, it's not that you can't ignore it, but I absolutely know that the amount of weight that it's given is not necessary, and it's not inevitable, like a lot of people say, because I know that from my own experience growing up. So I do think that it hurts more than it helps.
So Desiree, you actually believe that there is some hypocrisy when it comes to cultural appropriation, because we all participate in the sharing of cultures. Obviously, Black women, this comes up all the time. Black women wear weave that looks like white women.
I don't think there's anything wrong with either side doing that. I think if they want to beautify themselves and look pretty, that's wonderful. And if they see something that they think will look good on them, that's great. Make yourself look
Do
good.
you attribute that to is that hypocritical?
I think it's hypocritical when someone starts complaining, say, about the other side, or some side that they don't identify with, or race, I guess in this case, or culture.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying here is white people oftentimes, they get the lip surgery to get larger lips. They get a tan to get a little bit darker. But then there's something else to that. There's the lack of appreciation for a Black person's lips, a Black person's nose, a Black person's color. We're treated differently. You don't see that?
I can see that. You're saying that it's like they're only taking specific attributes, but then not appreciating where it comes from. I think that's what you're saying. I do think that happens, but I think that's human nature. I think that people, they want to have someone, very often they want to feel superior to other people, and that can take the form of race. I definitely think that people do that. So I think that's wrong. Yeah, I do think that that's specifically what you're describing there. I don't think that's a good thing. I also, something that does annoy me, this is one thing that does annoy me, is I lived in a neighborhood that was majority Black, but then I went into like a store and it's like all white magazines. Like, I think that's odd. If you have like a population that you're having like they're like your customers, but you're not even catering to them, that is something that I have like taken. I mean, I wouldn't really be all up in arms about it, but I have noticed that.
Okay, yeah. I haven't noticed that because it's all the other stuff I noticed, but okay. Nadra, you have said that cultural appropriation remains a concern for a variety of reasons. Name one.
Well, one reason is just it deprives people of color of capital, of money that should be going to them, of being framed as cultural innovators, as of their intellectual genius. When cultures are appropriated, and especially when they're appropriated by the dominant culture, which in our society is white people, all of those things are consequences, and it leads to differences in qualities of life. When you look at, for example, Black musicians, the pioneers of rock and roll and music forms like that. When you look at also Indigenous Americans as well, and how many people have ripped off their cultural traditions. And yet we're the two groups that often are living in poverty, or more likely to be living in poverty than other groups are, due to the legacies of slavery and colonization. So I think cultural appropriation in a capitalistic society, we're being robbed of capital as a result. That would be one of the most worrisome things.
Okay, Mo, I got you here. You back on with us, Mo. So let me go in on you on this one, okay? So
All right.
Naga says it's about the capital. Our culture is not getting the capital. But is that America's fault, or is that Black folks' fault? Is it our fault that we give away our culture? Like, let's use TikTok, for instance. We're on TikTok, which is not even an American app. It's not even out of America, but we can use Instagram, we can use Facebook, we can use any of those apps. Why hasn't a Black person created an app for Black people? Or just it doesn't even have to be for Black people. Why hasn't a Black person created an app that is as such?
Well, it's layered, and a lot of times this goes back to just cultural history within the United States. Black people can do it, but when someone non-Black does it, then all of a sudden it's a thing. You can go back to Elvis Presley and rock and roll. You can talk about R&B music. You can turn on American Idol, and you can see these white singers who's singing and riffing and doing all these vocal gymnastics, and they say, who do you want to be like? I want to be like Christina Aguilera, but they don't know the history, or they deny the history of those innovators coming out of the Black church tradition that they're mimicking and not necessarily mocking, but imitating. And so when you're robbed of the history and the credit, and that extends to all facets of the culture, then you're robbing of that capital, which has already been alluded to. We're not given credit for the innovation.
Yeah. And, I just watched a documentary that talked about Boys to Men, and how the downfall of Boys to Men were actually white band groups.
Mm.
And how the record labels literally pushed Boys to Men out of the way to make room for the NSYNCs and the Backstreet Boys of the world. Because Boys to Men, let's face it, they beat Elvis Presley. You speak of Elvis Presley. They topped Elvis Presley on the Billboard charts. So, and in addition to that, they were mainstream. White little girls loved them, and Black little girls loved them. And I guess the record industry was like, oh no, we got to get a white band in here. And that documentary is actually incredible to see how these white boy bands were fashioned directly and specifically after Boys to Men. We're going to take a quick break. Come right back. It's not the end of the road.
Hey Soulmates, it's your girl Demi from Fox Soul's Black Report. I wanted to invite you to check us out. Fox Soul's Black Report is the go-to source for Black news, views, and opinions.
I want to be around people who celebrate my culture.
We're live and interactive every day, and I'm personally bringing your comments and views into the conversation. I love my Black sisters, but Romeo be holding it down too.
Gotta do it.
We'd love to see it.
Check out Fox Soul's Black Report, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.
I almost got into a fight at JFK yesterday.
Hollywood Unlocked, Uncensored.
Now that everybody's trying to travel, people have forgotten what it's like to be crowded around the little bin where your luggage comes out.
Every Thursday.
I said, can you go stand on the other side, sir? I need to get right here because I know my bag is going to come out priority because I'm a priority. And he just looked at me. He refuses to move. I see my bag coming, so I nudged him.
You hit him first.
I did not hit him.
You nudged him.
I nudged him.
Wendy had a lot to say about Tabitha retiring her husband from the Los Angeles police force after 15 years.
TGIF.
I can't say what I want to say because that lady in our industry, and I don't need her shutting our stuff down. But Wendy need to mind her damn business. Every man is not Kevin Hunter.
Every Wednesday and Friday.
I'm gonna give them to you, Tabitha Brown. I'm giving you your roses. You inspire me.
When we come to LA, we want you to cook for us, Tabitha.
You know, cocktails and queens, baby. Best Mondays, here you go. Don't step in. Yeah.
This weekend on Fox Soul.
I want to make sure I make the most of it. So
Go out with a bang. A big bang on the door. Yeah. Bang, bang, bang.
Watch your favorite shows of the week.
We should hold each other accountable, not cancel. I saw everybody online talking about cancel Felicia Rashad. You gonna cancel Claire Huxtable? Are you crazy?
Fox Soul Weekend.
Nah, not with me. I'm not.
So, welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul, everyone. Tonight we are talking about cultural appropriation. Please welcome Desiree in here, Nadra is in here, and Mo Kelly is in here as well. So listen, can white people be the only group who can be accused of cultural appropriation? I spoke to Black women wearing weaves, and look, we straighten our hair just like white folk do, and we wear the white folk styles. Look, Farrah Fawcett, that hairstyle used to be my joint. Do you understand what I'm saying? I used to love doing them feathers that Farrah Fawcett has. So how can Black people be accused of cultural appropriation or not, Nadra?
Black people definitely have been accused of cultural appropriation. I don't think they're appropriating white culture, for example, because wearing your hair in weaves, we have to get real that a lot of Black women, they face discrimination in the workplace, and particularly they face discrimination for wearing their hair in natural hairstyles, to the point that we've had court cases as a result of that. There's one woman in particular, Chastity Jones, about 10 years ago, she had a job offer rescinded because she refused to cut off her dreadlocks. So those are the realities that Black women face, that they have to assimilate or they won't be able to advance often. But in terms of cultural appropriation, for example, just recently, Michael B. Jordan got into a controversy because he wanted to name his rum the name of a carnival that's popular in Trinidad and the Caribbean, but he has no links to the Caribbean. And Nicki Minaj called him out. A lot of Caribbean people called him out, and he said that he was not going to name the rum after that carnival any longer. So that's one example, but we've had, I think, Pharrell Williams, he's been called out for wearing a Native American headdress. So there are lots of examples, but usually it's people of color, accusing other people of color of appropriation, as opposed to white people accusing Black people of appropriation.
Yeah, Desiree, how do you feel about that? Can only Black people, or rather only white people, be accused of cultural appropriation?
No, I think people of different races or ethnicities or cultures can all do that. I also don't think it's bad for what you were saying Michael Jordan did. I think if someone has an actual connection, like maybe he went, I don't know, I'm wondering what carnival, like I think in Juve or something.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. Is that how you pronounce it? Jover?
Juve.
Okay.
I mean, that's the only name I could think of. I don't think that's necessarily bad. So if you go somewhere and you get inspired by something, I don't think it's a bad thing to incorporate that. I think it's good if you like tell the story, like this comes from, I don't know, these islands or whatever, but this is my opinion. I know that there are people who will really take issue with that, but I guess I don't feel that need to like guard the
I think that becomes the problem, Desiree. I think that's the problem that people have most when it comes to cultural appropriation, not only the commerce part of it, but also the fact that they are not credited for the idea. I mean, we can take TikTok, for example. The young woman, Addison Rae, who's a white woman, goes on to Jimmy Kimmel's show or Jimmy Fallon and proceeds to do these TikTok dances. But the Black people who created these TikTok dances were not invited on to the show to do the dances until obviously after it was an uproar about it. And TikTok itself has been accused of giving credit to white folk versus these young Black kids that are creating these dances and allowing the algorithm to favor white people. Mo Kelly?
Well, when we talk about cultural appropriation, it's usually inextricably linked to commodification and profiteering. You talk about TikTok, that has to do with profiteering. If you want to talk about Michael B. Jordan, that was connected to profiteering, there's usually a benefit for the person or group who is culturally appropriating. That's where the offense comes in. It's not necessarily just guarding history and traditions, but it's making sure that they're not misused or misapplied in a way for someone else to benefit, but not also have to deal with the pain. A lot of these cultural traditions are born out of pain and suffering. And then for other people to monetize them and not also credit the people who created them, that therein lies the rub. That's the issue. It's not, you can pay homage, but you can't just profit and then move on and take, like, which was done back to Elvis Presley, taking blues and rock and also other art forms, which were specifically born of the African-American cultural tradition of pain.
Yeah. Let me go to the chat room here real quick. Let's see. New York, New York. I'm imagining that's what the NY stands for, but it could be Nine. I don't know. White folks been wearing weave and wigs since the beginning of time. You bought it, you better work it. I like yours, Tammi Mac. Thank you. We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back on the Tammi McLeay Show on Fox Soul.
Wendy had a lot to say about Tabitha retiring her husband from the Los Angeles police force after 15 years.
TGIF.
I can't say what I want to say because that lady in our industry, and I don't need her shutting our stuff down. But Wendy need to mind her damn business. Every man is not Kevin Hunter.
Every Wednesday and Friday.
I'm gonna give them to you, Tabitha Brown. I'm giving you your roses. You inspire me.
When we come to LA, we want you to cook for us, Tabitha.
I almost got into a fight at JFK yesterday.
Hollywood Unlocked, Uncensored.
Now that everybody's trying to travel, people have forgotten what it's like to be crowded around the little bin where your luggage comes out.
Every Thursday.
I said, can you go stand on the other side, sir? I need to get right here because I know my bag is going to come out priority because I'm a priority. And he just looked at me. He refuses to move. I see my bag coming, so I nudged him.
You hit him first.
I did not hit him.
You nudged him.
I nudged him.
Every weekend, to get the true word on the street, you've got to speak the language.
It's time to put the culture back in pop culture.
Central Ave, a modern deep dive into entertainment that drives to the heart of the story. Fresh takes and authentic voices, bringing you the right show for right now.
Welcome to Central Ave.
Central Avenue. Weekends at 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on Fox Soul.
You know, cocktails and queens, baby. Best Mondays, here you go. Don't step in. Yeah.
This weekend on Fox Soul.
I want to make sure I make the most of it. So
Go out with a bang. A big bang on the door. Yeah. Bang, bang, bang.
Watch your favorite shows of the week.
We should hold each other accountable, not cancel. I saw everybody online talking about cancel Felicia Rashad. You gonna cancel Claire Huxtable? Are you crazy?
Fox Soul Weekend.
Nah, not with me. I'm not.
Thank you for watching the Tammi McLeay Show on Fox Soul. Desiree, tell us about your audio series, Just Thinking Out Loud.
Just Thinking Out Loud is both a video and audio series that touches on political topics. The most popular stuff is race, but I also talk about gender, economics. I guess those are communism. That's a really big one. And I'm actually starting to end it because I no longer want to participate in what I see online of people not being nice to each other, or what you were talking about earlier with Rachel about like taking sound bites and it's like not really connecting. So I decided that I wanted to take a step back from that. And then intellectually, I was also I have become bored, I guess, with a lot of the topics about identity and race, because I've been, I've kind of, it was like me encountering it and then having to deal with it. And I feel like I've thought so much about it at this point.
You need a breather. You need to back away from, I get it. I so get it. You need to back away from it for a little while. But I do believe your voice should be heard, because you have a very different perspective. And I don't think you should let the noise get in your way, Desiree. I mean that.
I appreciate that.
Nadra, you have a book that will be released soon called Toni Morrison's Spiritual Vision, Faith, Folktales, and Feminism in Her Life and Literature. I'm a fan. I used to win competitions doing Toni Morrison's work in high school. So I cannot wait to read your book, sister.
Thank you. Yes, a few years ago when Toni Morrison was still alive, I was asked to write an article about the importance of faith, and in particular, her Catholic faith, in books like Song of Solomon, Beloved, etc., how the Catholicism kind of seeps out. And a lot of people didn't know that Morrison was a Catholic. So I talk about her faith. I talk about kind of the history of Black Catholics overall. And some of it does get into some of these cultural appropriation issues that we've been talking about. For example, Morrison and her family, they also practiced hoodoo and different types of Black folk magic. And lately there's been an uptick in interest in that, and it's not always by Black people. So spiritual cultural appropriation, which is not something we focus on as much, has been getting more conversation lately. Who has the right to kind of promote or present themselves as an authority on certain spiritual and religious traditions?
Yeah. How did you become a fan of Toni Morrison, or were you ever? I think you were. You're writing a whole book on this.
Right. I was an English major in college, so I read most of her books in college, and I started off in high school with The Bluest Eye, and I've always clearly admired some of the tough issues that she tackles. But as I've gotten older and more interested and more knowledgeable about different forms of religion, I found that aspect of her life pretty fascinating.
Okay, well, it'll be fascinating for us to read about as well. Mo Kelly, it's the Mo Kelly Show. It is the Mo Kelly. Please take a little time to tell the folk what the Mo Kelly Show is all about.
The Mo Kelly Show is everything from politics to popular culture. We want you to listen, we want you to learn, and also laugh. So it's a journey, it's a conversation, it's a dialogue, it's not just a monologue. And hopefully you'll learn something more about a point of view that you had not considered, or hear voices that you may not have heard before, and you come away with a different perspective as opposed to just being in your own head and just believing everything that you think. Saturdays and Sundays from 6 to 8 p.m. on KFI AM 640. And you can also catch me on the Black Information Network every single weekday. I do the 2-minute warning, 2-minute commentaries on the issues of the day. So let's keep this conversation going.
I want to ask one more question. And Mo Kelly, since we're ending on you, I'll ask you, has cancel culture made us oversensitive when it comes to accusing people of cultural appropriation? I mean, can a white girl wear her braids or what?
I don't believe there is such a thing as cancel culture. I just believe that the masses have more of a voice and they can voice it. But the people, for example, if there were cancel culture, Tucker Carlson would not have a job. Bill Maher would not have a job. So cancel culture, as far as I'm concerned, is overblown. And I don't think it's actually as real as people want to make it out to be.
Well, those two people you named, though, have a significant amount of ratings that wouldn't allow them to be canceled.
Which comes back to just money. So it's not necessarily a culture. It still goes back to money.
Well, I say it's capitalism culture.
Yeah.
That's what it is. If you're making business for me, then I'm going to keep you on. If you say something that's going to hurt my bottom line, then you're fired. That's how it works.
That's how it works. We do live in a capitalist society, and the bottom line is the money, which is, I tell Black folk all the time, look, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Do not buy into it. And I'm telling you, it will be changed in a heartbeat, as much money as we sink into the American retail. Well, thank you so much, Desiree. Thank you, Nadra, and thank you, Mo Kelly, for being on the Tammi Mack Late Show. And until next time, it's a blessing to be in your box. Bye, y'all.